welcome. You're welcome. How are you? How are you? Oh, good. Bring your wife.
Aileen, do you have the sheet? She wants to speak and didn't get to sign it. Hi, how are you? That you can go up. Okay. You take care of you guys.
Yeah.
Good evening and welcome to the Northampton County Council meeting for October 7th. I've asked Mr. McGee to lead us in a pledge of allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ms. Zembo, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Kuzic.
Present.
Mrs. Ferraro. Mr. Giovanni.
Present.
Mr. Heckman.
Present.
Mr. Lott.
Here.
Mr. McGee.
Here.
Mr. Myers.
Here.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Here.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of September 16, 2021?
Motion.
Mr. G? Second, please.
Second.
All in favor by acclamation?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion passes. Courtesy of the floor, I have two people signed in. I'm going to ask them to come up. I'm going to ask you to state your name again for the record and your address, and you have 5 minutes to speak. First, I have Beverly Hernandez.
That's me. So I'm here to talk about the drop boxes. Last year we had 3, this year we have 4. I wonder how many we'll have next year. We did have one of them for 24/7. That's now back to 8:30 to 8. I'm not knowing why we're not having sheriffs standing there watching them. I'm wondering why we increased to 4 when many counties don't have any and some counties only have 1. I think we're the only county that has 4. So that's my statement. Thank you.
And a Melanie Morgan.
Melanie Morgan, live at 2753 Tamlin Lane, Easton. I want to know how come they're not going to be videotaped, to where if there's any questions that you have about ballot harvesting, that you have videotape to be released.
This is your time to speak. We're not
Yeah,
necessarily
on
gonna
the
answer
Dropbox.
questions. We don't
Okay.
dialogue. This is just your time to make a
Okay.
statement, ma'am.
I just feel that they need to be videoed for just that, packing out the boxes. Because allowing people to walk up and just put ballots in, they're gonna put multiple, let's be real. They're not gonna put one and walk away. Not in this county. That's all I wanna know is how come they're not gonna be watched, either by a sheriff or by video, or both. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming this evening. Are there any people that did not sign in that are here and wish to speak? If you do, you need to come forward, speak your name and your address into the microphone, and again, you get no more than 5 minutes.
Good evening. Can I take my mask down to speak to you?
No, please.
No, okay, just asking. So we do have 4 locations, I believe, for the drop
What's your
boxes.
name and your address,
I'm sorry,
please?
Cheryl Gerkovich, Gerkovich, Cheryl with an S, Sheryl. I'm at 4592 Fur Drive, Nazareth. Okay. So I believe we have the 4 drop boxes, and we do have, as the other ladies mentioned, we do have sheriffs that go out to school board meetings. So why not allow their shifts to shift into the evening and place them by the Dropbox location? That's a valid question. And the videotaping? I mean, do you want citizens to go out and videotape, or do you want to have some videotape on record? So the sheriffs do go to school board meetings. So I believe they have worked in the evenings. It's not just a 9 to 5. There's so much suspicion out there. So you can alleviate that suspicion on both sides. Less hassle for both parties, because after the election, you know, it's going to happen unless they feel that their votes are secured. Well, thank you very much for listening, and please consider that to keep it fair for everyone, every legal voter. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Ashley Strange, 815 South Front Street, Allentown. I'm representing my membership of Lehigh Valley Stands Up, which is why I'm here, even though I don't live in the county. So one of the things that our membership has been doing is really talking to voters and finding out what a lot of the barriers are. You know, even like they said, like having drop boxes is excellent. Like making sure that we have enough, making sure that they're open enough. Over in our cousins or our neighbors in Lehigh County, there's a 24-hour drop box. And so that is in the county government center. And it gives people the ability to walk up anytime, day or night. It's under constant surveillance by videos, and they're able to actually put in their ballot and then go. A lot of those problems that we had earlier came from the fact that people were trying to vote and they were pulling up in the middle of the day. They couldn't find parking. And so, you know, they were getting parking tickets just from waiting outside on the street for a chance to get them dropped off. Personally, I was born and raised in Fairbanks, Alaska. We have a lot of really rural areas out there. But one of the big things that we do have is we have drive-by drop boxes. And especially when it comes to voting and when it comes to making sure that everyone has access to the vote, planning, right? I am not standing here asking the council to put something in place by this November, because there will never be enough planning that can be done to make sure that all those ballots are collected safely. But this is something that we can do to expand the vote, especially here in the Lehigh Valley. As someone who used to work at Amazon, I know that I was at work at 5 o'clock in the morning, and then sometimes I would work a 12-hour shift, and I would get home and just sleep straight through until I got right back up. And so for a lot of the people in the area that are working 3rd shifts, 4th shifts, we've got a lot of nurses that are working overtime, making sure that they have the ability to put in their ballot whenever they can will really help enhance the vote. And especially when it comes to drop boxes. The planning, yes, it does cost money. I've had a conversation with the executive here. It does cost money. And knowing that when we're putting these in place, more people are going to be able to access the vote. More people are going to be able to do so outside of, you know, the normal 9 to 5 or even the 8 to 8 that some of these drop boxes are open. And so I do have there's a plan that other states have used, that other counties have used when it comes to drop boxes, and I appreciate all the work that the county has done so far. I've been talking to the Amy's down in voter registration, and they have done a phenomenal job pushing all of this stuff, and there are ways that we can improve it. there are ways that we can make it better. So absolutely, making sure that wherever we're putting these drop boxes, there's proper security, proper lighting, proper parking. There's so many ways that we can do this and expand it. And if anyone is interested, I'd be happy to send over an email with some examples that have been done in other states and counties. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak during courtesy of the floor?
May I put my 2 cents in?
Oh, okay, only
Or do
two.
I have to go over there?
I'll give you privilege, day is privilege. You get 5 minutes. no more.
Anyway, I just don't, I would just like to know why, since the sheriffs are at the door for security, why the drop box isn't right there so the sheriff can see exactly what's going on. To me, it's just a simple solution to take care of any question. Videotape is one thing, but after you stuff the ballot box, who's going to know what they put in? And secondly, we're already with the sheriffs there, and they could work a few more hours to cover the extra hours. It's not, I don't think it's a big expense or a big deal to get rid of the perception that there's any shenanigans. It would eliminate all the perception of any shenanigans going on with drop boxes. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Peg. Anyone else for courtesy of the floor? Mr. McClure, time for your executive report.
Sure, we have 4 drop boxes, one represented in each of our county council districts. So that's important to understand. We had 4 in the 2020 general election. Also important to understand. They are all under 24-hour video surveillance. They're not all open 24 hours, but they are all under video surveillance. We have 1 in the courthouse rotunda under video surveillance. We have 1 inside of City Hall in Bethlehem under video surveillance. We have 1 in our 911 center, which has video surveillance right on the box and is video surveillance all around the building. Can't walk around that building without being photographed. And finally, at our DHS building, it's in the vestibule, so you have to walk in there. That is also under video surveillance. I happen to agree with the folks, including Mrs. Ferraro, who want a sheriff to sit next to the box. That is, unfortunately, illegal under Pennsylvania law. And you don't have to take my word for it. Mr. Santee is here, and he can explain to you why that is illegal under Pennsylvania law.
May I have a
So we can't,
question
go
now?
ahead.
If this is under video surveillance, may we come in and watch those videos?
When? When do you want to watch them, Peg?
I mean,
When there's an allegation of,
I don't know if there's any question. I mean, I just don't feel comfortable with a video. I just feel more comfortable if we have more security around them. And I would like to look into that law, and I'd like you to give me a copy of the law that tells me that the sheriff, that we can't have,
Mr. Santee will explain the law. Go, okay, sure.
I'm Richard Santee, and I'm an assistant solicitor for Northampton County, and I'm assigned to the election division. And so the question is about armed sheriffs, armed police by drop boxes. And under the election code, it is not lawful on a polling place on election day. Law enforcement has to stay 100 feet away from a
which is
polling place.
fine. They're not going to be
Ms.
in there.
Ferraro, let him speak.
And so under Pennsylvania law, there is an issue of voter intimidation that with having armed security by a ballot box, that is an issue under both the Help American Votes Act. It's not just Pennsylvania, but federal law. This is an issue that involves multiple levels of legal issues that have to be addressed. But currently, that does
I'll
not
look
appear to
into
be
that.
practical.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I follow up?
Sure.
Just as a follow-up to Mrs. Ferraro's question on that. So you've made the point about the law enforcement. I guess those of us that vote in person, we have a judge of elections sitting there, a minority inspector, a majority inspector. As an alternative to law enforcement, would that be permissible?
There's no mechanism in the code allowing a minority and majority inspector to be there specifically. If you're talking about by a Dropbox, a member of the public that is not involved in law enforcement, you can't prevent someone from being present in a place they're lawfully entitled to be unless they're interfering in the voter engaged in the vote. And one of the issues is you can't have someone checking credentials at the Dropbox under Pennsylvania law as it currently stands.
To me, this is just another example of no common sense in government.
Okay, I would ask that people be recognized before they
Okay,
make comments.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Myers.
Paul, there's a very good reason why an armed officer is not present at a lot of places where people vote. As the only man of color sitting here, it was used as a tool to keep people like me away from voting. That's why the law was put there. Now, you can sugar it up, paint it any other way you want to put it. That's why the law was put there. And anybody sitting here that doesn't get why we can't have law enforcement there, that's a prime example. Wow. All you got to do is remember a guy by the name of Bull Durham. He beat the hell out of black folks when he went to vote. So that's why no one with any kind of armed whatever should be nowhere near, because we don't want people to turn away and not vote. Now, because you want to question videotape, this is 2021. If someone's going to doctor a videotape, it's damn well going to get caught. That's just the nature of the beast. And I can look over at my friend, Mr. Giovanni, and he will tell you the same damn thing. You can't doctor anything. You're going to get caught. But I just want to make sure it's clear. The reason for that is called voter intimidation. And there's been many laws passed this year to intimidate people and not allow people to vote. And I will not take part in any kind of intimidation in this county. I will fight you tooth and nail. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Santee, can I ask you another question? The implication has been made here that people could copy ballots or so. I mean, aren't there very specific things that people receive? It has to be processed. Could you review one more time very clearly how that envelope needs to come back? Because I don't see how you could multiply copy the whole thing, but just to make sure that people understand the process.
The ballots are, if a voter applies for a mail-in or absentee ballot, that is processed by voter registration, making sure the voter is registered to vote in the county and eligible in that election. Once that's done, we have a contract with the printer, which produces ballots which are secure. They have barcodes as well as other signatures on them that allow them to be read by a machine, as well as to know that it is not a copy but an official mail-in or absentee ballot. Those ballots are then read through the machine on election night to be counted. Ballots are returned in a secrecy envelope, which is sealed, and I would always educate the voting public that it's vital that they seal their secrecy envelope, put the ballot secrecy envelope into the outer envelope, fill it out completely, signing and dating that, seal it, and then return it. It can be returned by Dropbox. It can be returned by mail. It can be returned in person at the voter registration office. And those are the ways that a mail-in or absentee ballot is processed and delivered.
So if there's 50 copies of 001, that would obviously be flagged and it would be.
That's correct. That they are numbered, the barcode, the numbering on the ballots, that would be caught, yes.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr. Heckman.
I'm glad you're here, and I understand. I mean, we all know at the county we're charged with this, but we do also know the state changed the law, and we did what we could to get to accommodate the law. But I mean, when we use terms, and I just want to be clear, because you're the solicitor for the Election Bureau, there's two, sometimes I think they get co-joined. The illegal ballot, let's say somebody goes to a graveyard, and we all hear about those stories, especially some of us that are old, numerous stories over many elections about dead people voting. That's total fraud. But then we talk about ballot harvesting, and I get the sense that could be, which is illegal, but that could be, let's say, somebody saying, I happen to be by Mr. McClure's house. So I say, Mr. McClure, I'll take your ballot along with your wife's, and I have mine and my wife, and I go drop it. Now, having said that, that's not legal under the law as it stands. Those ballots, though, themselves, I don't want to co-join in. The ballots were illegal themselves, but the process of casting them went against the law.
So and I apologize, I'm going to give you a lawyer's answer, that you've used
Get lawyer
terms
answers a lot.
that language is important, and I agree. Terms illegal ballots and ballot harvesting are not terms used in the election code. I understand people ascribe meanings to those.
That's right.
But,
They're used
like I
a lot.
said, it's important, words matter in my line of work.
Yes.
So it's important to understand that there are differences. What constitutes fraud is a legal determination. There's a specific definition which is applied to common law fraud. It's not necessarily something specific to the election code, that there are crimes of fraud under the election code. There is voter fraud under the election code, but those are very different forms. Impersonating a voter when you're not the person voting, doing something, copying ballots, that could be considered fraud. That could simply be interfering in the election process is what the code actually speaks to.
Well, as you said, you're a lawyer. There's different levels, for example, of manslaughter. So I'm saying somebody, and this is going to have to be worked over time, somebody literally falsifies a ballot. Then you have a guy who says to his wife, she has the flu. He says, I'm going down, give me your ballot, I'll go and I'll take both of ours. Technically speaking, he broke the law. But to me, that's almost like third-degree manslaughter versus first-degree manslaughter. And I don't know the law, you do, and I'm not condoning the man taking his wife's ballot, but I think there are degrees as opposed to somebody, a political operative, collecting 50 ballots and then dropping them.
So Northampton County wants to specifically caution you that you may only deliver your own ballot to the drop box. This is very serious. If you're seen delivering multiple ballots, you could be reported to the authorities, including the district attorney or the attorney general of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and prosecuted. You may only deliver your own ballot. There is a special form that can be filled out that you may deliver if that form is filled out properly, and it has to be filled out by the voter. And then I believe it has to be turned in at elections.
Yes.
and certified. Then you can deliver another ballot. But Northampton County wants to be very clear. We take that very seriously. One person can only drop off their own ballot unless they have the special paperwork filled out.
I just want to make one clarification. You said in the law that in both HAVA and the election laws, that, and federal laws, that a sheriff can't be next to the ballot box, but that there is nothing in the law that prohibits a regular person, a citizen, from occupying a public space. Is it not interference if you would have somebody from the public guarding the ballot box? And is there a specific distance that somebody from the public who would be sitting there would have to occupy?
And the Pennsylvania Election Code has laws prohibiting interference in the person attempting to vote. That's voter interference.
Right.
That is a prosecutable offense. That a member of the public cannot become the arbiter of who's allowed to drop off a ballot at a drop box. Additionally, just like in any other space, a person cannot occupy a space if they're interfering, the business is transacting there generally. There's also voter intimidation laws, which are federal laws that could be construed as voter intimidation. If you're asking for specific language, these laws are broad, but have been interpreted to make conduct that would cause a voter to not be able to drop off a ballot a crime.
And who would enforce that law? Like, let's say let's just say a regular person decided that they're going to sit next to the ballot box because they believe that it needs to be surveilled and there's no sheriff around. And they believe that they're sitting there doing their patriotic duty. who would enforce the law and say that they are interfering? And would it be a misdemeanor or a felony, or what kind of crime would that be?
A report should be made to the election office. The district attorney and the Attorney General of Pennsylvania have co-exclusive authority to enforce. I practice civilly. There are levels. Some conduct may be considered misdemeanor under the code. It might be a felony. It depends on what is charged, so I can't answer that. But there are a wide array of charges that conduct, if a prosecuting attorney under the code decides to charge. And that's not within the elections office purview is to field reports, gather the information, and provide that to the people with the prosecuting authority, the DA or the Attorney General, as the case may be.
Right. I just wanted to make that clarification because I think it was a little open-ended whether or not there was any sort of enforcement or consequences to somebody guarding a ballot box. And I think there might be some people who would do that in this county. Just saying.
Are there any other questions about the drop boxes?
Would you like to continue with your regularly?
I would, but no,
I think
it's an important subject. Everyone here had a valid concern that it deserves to have a response. But,
I'm sorry. It just came to
okay.
quickly. May someone that's mailing their ballot, not dropping out a ballot box, but mailing, and say my wife's working, and I want to bring my wife's ballot, she must mail it, correct?
The law says that the voter must mail their ballot.
Okay, thank you.
Are we good? All right, so we're always talking, change subjects here a little bit. We're often talking here about our future being green and talking about it in terms of farmland preservation, environmentally sensitive land, open space, but we're also talking about some of the projects we've been working on over the past several years. And with our forensic center, I had a report today about the solar panels. So I don't know anything about electricity, but apparently it takes 115, is it kilowatts, Charles? Megawatts, 115 megawatts to run our forensic center.
Wow.
And our solar panels are producing 113 now? Yes. So we are almost powering our new forensic center with our solar panels. So that's pretty cool. We don't have October's date. We don't have October's data yet, but we may actually. Now it's more complicated than that, but that's the energy that's being produced with those solar panels. And we could be using more than the 115 megawatts because I don't have the usage numbers, but it's pretty cool that we're pretty close to the specifications on that. And staying along those lines, you have the Spengler property in front of you tonight, I believe for public hearing and final passage, 112 acres in East Allen Township, one of the most pressured areas in the county for development. We're taking that off the table for development for all time. And I hope you do this unanimously because it'll send a strong message to our citizens that our future is green, that we do this in a bipartisan basis, that we understand land preservation is one of the county's only ways to fight back against warehouse proliferation. Big, long discussion last night about what planning commissions can do and what local zoning's all about. But as long as we keep our eye on the ball and continue to spend our money on our green spaces, we'll do what we can here. You have on your agenda tonight $4.7 million in American Rescue Aid for various entities. You have, of course, our small businesses. We have almost $1 million in grants on your agenda tonight for our small businesses, so we can help them survive this pandemic, and so they'll be able to thrive on the other side. You have EMS grants for our fire companies, our volunteer fire companies, so critical to all of us throughout the county, and our EMS companies. Our EMS companies are really struggling. There are millions of dollars here available to them tonight. To our municipalities and our police departments, we are funding the police to the tune of several millions of dollars tonight. So when you're considering all these, I want you to consider that you're getting money out to the folks who need it, the folks who are on the front line of the pandemic, the folks who bore the greatest burden of the pandemic. You're getting that out there to them tonight. And finally, you have a resolution on your agenda for the consideration of renaming Bear Swamp Park and Archery Complex. This came up at the retiree luncheon the other day, and the former member of county council, twice a member of county council actually, handed me a list of his accomplishments, and I didn't need to see it. Because without seeing that, I know how accomplished Jerry Seifert is. I know he was our county councilman. I know he was our county executive. I know he was our director of court services. I know he came back to pinch hit for us when we had a county council vacancy. I know he served on the retirement board on several occasions because he cares so much about his fellow former county employees. And we also know about his love for archery. We know he's gone the world over with his bow and his arrow. And it just seemed to me to be such a synergy to name this complex after him because of his love for archery, because he did so much for open space. He did things for open space at a time when it wasn't cool yet. He was a conservationist. He was a conservationist when a lot of the people who were leading in the forefront of conservation were people who were hunters and people who were fishermen. Those were the people who were interested in conservation because they understood what was happening. And he was one of those people. He was the leader. So what we call Wayne Grube Park was Weaversville before the great Wayne Grube died. And you know, we could put Wayne Grube's name on anything. He was great. You served with him, Mrs. Ferraro. I'm sure you have many fond memories, as I do. But he bought Wayne Grube Park. He did that. So I just hope you unanimously name this after him. I have this thing that if you're going to recognize somebody, you do it while they're here to appreciate it. Thank you. And with that, I suggest the necessity of a executive session to discuss a personnel and litigation matter.
Thank you. I believe I need to ask for a motion to do so. Mr. Myers, a second. Mr. Giovanni, do I have to call for a vote? If I have a motion and second? No vote? All right, we're leaving at what time? It's 7:01. No pens. 7:03. Oh, you have 03? I'm at 03. I'm at 01.
It's good that you missed it.
What are you doing? What? That is a mess. If I'm out of my lane, tell me. What happened?
It's a long story. I will tell you. I can't.
Well, I understand.
Congratulations, sir. Welcome.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Exactly. Got verification of polls. Yeah, that was this county. We had four people from this county. And they're probably in Northampton County either. Oh, blatant corruption. We know. We saw it. No, I didn't say that, but.
Wasn't there an area where could have been the first time there was there was an event for
Yeah, they did an event at Curly Bakers,
right?
and it was in the area for a lot. We also went to Bangor with
Yeah,
the event, and there's a great picture of Emma. And they thought they were clapping for her. And it was stomping on her food. She made all the women in Bangor, wherever it was held, sort of, were so nice.
Oh, yeah.
And so I said, Governor, you're going, right? And she was like, kids are really.
What's that? 640. Biggest one in the house. Working.
So, you know, making sure. Right, and so making sure.
Yes, so that's.
So that's.
Yes.
Oh.
That's why we're looking for.
His heart wasn't into it.
100%.
Referee.
Oh, Steve Barrett, okay.
I don't think we're working all that much.
Okay, gotcha. All right, very good. So, yeah, what do you have?
Friday, I'm at the Pottsville.
Yes, that's it.
That's the idea.
Usually getting East Stroudsburg.
I will say this, as long as I'm on East Stroudsburg and it's actually the old system here in Pottsville, the whole 5 of them. So it's gonna be a good one.
We're in the big ticket.
There you go. I should see
Take care.
it.
Thank you.
See it. No, but Randall's like, yeah, the best behaved kid in the room on the picture. And it was like a backhanded slap at me, like, you take care of your brat.
Okay, I was like.
Jerry, do you still keep in touch with Eileen now? political stories over the years. I mean, you know, hang out on Saturday for coffee, cookies are all decked out. Like, I miss those days. You know, when it's just.
Yes, 300. Yeah, I believe it. But it's going three different grant programs, and it's going to charities. Yeah.
Oh, there, saw that.
Well, yes.
For tonight, it's
For
only.
tonight, it's 200.
Tonight,
Get approved
yeah.
tonight, and the other 100 is in another program.
Yeah, it's gonna be.
That'll get approved
Not
later.
one tonight. That's all we have for tonight, is two. You have a small business.
I filled out some surveys, and 40 cents last year.
I have some money.
What do you give them, a quarter?
Penny. Steve seems sweet to give them all.
No, so I have a silver certificate on my desk. You walk out of here, Mom. I have a silver certificate on my desk, and everybody's like, why do you have this $1 silver certificate on your desk? So I named it that, so now it's gonna stay. Oh, yeah, oh, Jesus, stop. For once in my life, I'm glad I did not send a check out, but it got lost.
You are very lucky. Hunky dory. Homicetic.
Oh, God.
Yes, sir.
He looked at, yeah. All right.
Let the record reflect that we're back at, I have 7:12 PM, and that we were in an executive session to discuss a personnel issue. No action was taken. Thank you. Before we begin with old business, I would just like to take a moment of silence and reflection to honor the passing of our county controller, Mr. Anthony Basile. It was an untimely and unfortunate loss, and he will be missed. Thank you. Our condolences to his family. Moving on with old business, tonight we have a public hearing of an ordinance entitled, "An Ordinance of the County Council of Northampton County authorizing the purchase of approximately 112 acres of real property by the County of Northampton in East Allen Township, Pennsylvania, from Nancy F. Spengler, now by marriage Nancy S. Bruck, Donald D. Spengler, Peggy M. Moser, and Donna S. Neely. Myself and Mr. Myers introduced this ordinance at the September 16th meeting. Are there any questions or comments from the public regarding this issue? Or any from council? Mr. Cusick?
Yeah, one quick thing. Certainly, this is a wonderful piece of property, and I intend to support the purchase. But one concern that I would make moving forward is that the access is very limited. I mean, essentially, this is almost like a flagpole lot. So I think in the future, if the county were to pursue a park or significant development of this property, additional road frontage would need to be sought in order to make that happen. So again, I intend to support it, but I think that long-term down the road, I think that better access to the property will need to be established in order for it to be a publicly accessible parkland.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments?
Ms. Acevedo is here if she has anything to say.
Do you need to address this, or any questions for her?
Well, I just want to say thank you to you and Brian Cope for all the work that you do. I know that this acquisition was a monumental lift, and it's going to stave off 5 warehouses. And that is, in itself, something that we should praise. And, I know that you guys do a great job there, and thank you again.
Thank you for being here also. If there's no further discussion on this, let's count for the vote.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. Lott.
Yes.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
And Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. Is there any other old business to discuss this evening? Hearing and seeing none, we have new business considering renaming Bear Swamp Park and Archery Complex resolution. Mr. Heckman, will you introduce the resolution?
I will, but may I say a preface before I do?
Well, why don't you introduce the resolution and then you can preface it after?
All right, well, I'm going to be reading the whole thing.
You're introducing the resolution. Go ahead.
All right. Whereas former Northampton County Executive, County Councilman, County Council President, and Northampton County Director of Court Services, Gerald E. Seyfried, was a pioneer for the preservation of open space within Northampton County, and whereas Gerald E. Seyfried made open space preservation a cornerstone of his administration, and whereas as a result of his efforts, Northampton County has significantly increased its ownership of county parks, open space preservation of farmland and recreational facilities, all to the benefit of Northampton County. And whereas Gerald E. Seyfried maintained a vision for the future of Northampton County and his complete support for the preservation of open space, and whereas his lifetime of dedication by Gerald E. Seyfried to Northampton County, as well as his dedication for improving the quality of life in Northampton County, makes Gerald E. Seyfried deserving of recognition. And whereas Northampton County is desirous of naming the Bear Swamp Park and Archery Complex, situated within Upper Mount Bethel Township, Northampton County, Pennsylvania, to be known as the Gerald E. Seyfried Bear Swamp Park and Archery Complex. Now therefore it is hereby resolved by Northampton County Council that Bear Swamp Park and Archery Complex, situated within Upper Mount Bethel Township, Northampton County, Pennsylvania, will be named the Gerald E. Seyfried Bear Swamp Park and Archery Complex, and for the County of Northampton to provide any and all resources to effectuate this name change, including but not limited to the appropriate signage. And I so introduce it.
Thank you. We now have any discussion?
I just want to make a few remarks that I guess it's no longer a preface. But anyway, it's the executive mentioned some things. I handed out a paper. I wanted all council members to have it. And it's Jerry's honors and accomplishments. I didn't get into his resume, I mean, because it's too long. And so I mean, I could, I know about Jerry and everything, but you can read this for yourself. I did want to point out a couple of things because this was always germane to me, and why I've always thought that outside of the Wayne Group Park complex, other than that, this would be appropriate for Jerry in that Jerry was the founder and organizer and served as chairman of the Northampton County Bow Fest, held at the Mincy Lake Bear Swamp Archery Complex. The annual archery festival raised thousands of dollars each year, and these were further used to further the goals and objectives of the Northampton County Federation of Sportsmen's Club, including funding for the Northampton County Junior Conservation School and donations to the Conservancy for the Preservation of Open Space. And I know how important the Junior Federation and the young people education is to Jerry. It's important to me because I went to Jerry's Bow Fest, and even though I dabble in archery over the years, I was a bit intimidated to enter into those competitions. But it was there where I saw the guy in the buckskins who would throw the plates up in the air and would shoot them with bow and arrow, which to this day, I'm still fascinated by what he did. But I remember going to those, and that was amazing. And the thing that might tie in with that sort of is the Whitetail Deer Classic Committee honored Jerry by dedicating an award for him called the Gerald Jerry Seyfried Conservation Award. This award is presented to a sportsman, sportswoman who have unselfishly given of their time and talents for the preservation of our outdoors, our environment, and the shooting sports. I think that's important because the Whitetail Classic was Jerry's baby. And I don't know how many years it's been going, but I know I've been going to all of them, and even 1 or 2 years I might have gotten lucky and won something in the raffle. But anyway, that's about young people. I mean, he's a firm believer, and as I am, you know, rather than get into arguments over archery or shooting sports as to good versus evil, it's going back to the essence, and Jerry and I have talked about this, of even the NRA, which was teaching skills. If you know the skills, and it's about outdoors, it's about conservation, there's so much involved in it. And I know Jerry is very passionate about raising money for the youth program that we have. And finally, something that I'm well aware of, as Mrs. Ferraro is that Jerry founded the Parks 2000 program in Northampton County and provided funding in county budgets for the acquisition and development of properties such as the Weaversville tract of land and properties adjoining the Mincy Lake complex. So, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but you know, Jerry, people that know him know, and if you don't know him, I would say that you should talk to him. In today's age of history comprises the past 30 seconds, I think that you would get a wealth of knowledge about our open space programs. And also, in line with this, since we talked about all his county history, the Home Rule Charter. I don't know if I fair to call Jerry a layman, but I mean, I don't know anyone, whether a law degree or not, that understands the charter as well as Jerry. And if you want to have a debate or a discussion, Jerry will be happy to accommodate you. He's always willing to discuss the charter. I learned a lot from him. I didn't just learn what I should do. Along the way, being young and rambunctious when I first got in, as I was, Peg, I learned what not to do, sometimes the hard way. So anyway, I would say that this is, if anybody wants to say anything, I would hope that we would get a unanimous vote on this. There's no one I can think of who is better represented, especially that, and maybe it's better it worked out this way, because I think of Jerry, I think of outdoors, I think of getting away from the hubbub and the lake, the archery. I mean, to me, that says Jerry all over. So anyway, and that's an ongoing preserve that will be here forever, hopefully, as opposed to buildings that fall apart, change. So anyway, that's what I have to say, Madam President.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge that Mr. Seyfried is here tonight along
Could
with
I
his
say a
wife.
few words too?
Yes, you may.
Okay, because I have to go back to 1989 when
Can I
Jerry
just-
won
Do you
his
want to come down here and receive some of this love, or are you good sitting there?
tough-fought
You
election.
could come on up and feel the love, because people are giving it.
Feel the
so you might
love,
as well.
Jerry. In '89, Jerry won a tough-fought race. I was the only Republican to win. Ron Heckman went to bed probably thinking he lost. He woke up the next morning as a winner, and Ron has gone on to serve the county so well in various positions, both here in the legislative and in the executive branches. Those 4 years were so memorable, Jerry, especially things like the Barston study. And then remember that little tax decrease that the council threw? Yeah, we won't tell you how we arrived at that. The beginning of Farmland Preservation, Parks 2000, so many good programs. And no matter how contentious it got at county council meetings, all the problems were solved because Jerry took us all to the cross timbers after the meetings. And they were really good times. We went together to all kinds of events, the whole council, and just built trust, good cohesive work ethic that benefited the county. And Jerry, I have to say, was the most nonpartisan leader that I have ever seen. I just wish some of our elected officials today could take lessons from your leadership, Jerry. And I'd just like to say thank you. Jerry, you're the best. We learned well from you, and congratulations on this. I just hope we get Bear Creek Swamp finished and dedicated very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion from council on this matter? Would you like to say a few words, or would you like to wait till we vote? Why don't we take the vote? Because if you start, we may not get the vote in, so let me do that.
Yeah, I think you ought to vote.
Okay, thank you. Look, I have nothing but the highest esteem for you, and I never did archery with you, but all I know is that you put my dad in a truck one day, and you talked very nicely to him, and all he could get over was, this guy goes fishing in Alaska, and he just, you're a good person as well as a good sportsman, so thank you. All right, let's call for the vote. Let's get this done.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. Lott.
Yes.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky. Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro.
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Okay. You got yourself a swamp park. I believe Mr. Heckman wants to,
And then you got to say whatever you want to say. The president of council said you can go on for hours if you wish.
I didn't say that, but we love you anyway.
Take your masks
Yeah,
off.
I'm going to take my mask off. Tell him he can find
Thank
me.
you.
Look at us. Oh, go ahead. Look there. Then turn this way, guys.
Turn this way.
Okay.
And then turn to Lamont.
There's a hell of a lot of history here. There you go, buddy. It's yours.
I want to thank all of you for the very kind words and for the unanimous vote here tonight. It's been a long career, but it's been a very rewarding career with Northampton County, dating all the way back to 1978 when I first served on council. And you'll find a little humor in this, I hope. I testified in 1976 at a hearing on the Home Rule Charter up in Bangor. And I warned them that when you created this county executive position, you're creating a monster. You will find that in their records. Believe me, it's a true fact. I warned them they were creating a monster. But I want to thank you for this recognition. It's hard to find the words that tell you how much this means to me, and I sincerely mean that. And Lamont, said some nice things. and he said them exactly the way I told him to say them, you know. But sincerely, it's been a pleasure doing the things that I did. I've had a lot of help along the way with county councils, with other administrations. My wife,
Could we have her up?
I
Come on,
told her
Julie.
to come up.
Behind
Come on,
every
Julie,
great
look
man
at
is an
that.
even better
Come on.
woman. Let's go. Just stand up for a minute at least.
Come on, Julie, at least stand up, please.
Yay.
And the things that I did, Julie was always there supporting me. And Ron, you brought up the Whitetail Deer Classic. For those of you that have never been there, Julie and I started that banquet in my basement, and it was to fund what was known as the Northampton County Federation of Sportsmen's Club, the Northampton County Youth Field Day Program, which I founded back in the early 90s while I was county executive, because we wanted to get the kids out of the house and out doing things, in the parks. And the other one was the, let's see, we had three of them. Junior Conservation School and the Federation of Sportsmen's Clubs. The first year, we made a $44,000 profit. A lot of that money went to the preservation of open space. Today, that banquet has generated over $2 million in money, most of it going to the Northampton County Junior Conservation School and the Northampton County Youth Field Day Program. Over 5,000 kids have gone through that program. That is reward and so rewarding when you do something like that. And this here is the icing on that cake. Believe me, there's a lot of other things that you could probably go into, but the thing is, I can't thank you enough for this honor. And hopefully, there'll be when the whole complex is finished, there'll be maybe a ribbon cutting, okay, so I can have my family there to share in this honor and this award. So again, I appreciate everything. This is something that words to me I just can't express. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Madam
sir.
President,
Yes, sir.
could the clerk dig up that 1976 thing that Jerry talked about, the executive being a monster? I'd like to
Oh,
read
dear
it.
God, I'm going to move on. Thank you. Don't ruin this nice moment. Next, we have the consideration of Northampton County's designation as an urban county under the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 resolution. Mr. Brooks reviewed this earlier in the Economic Development Committee, and I'm going to start with the next to last, or the last whereas. Whereas the county's agreement with each municipality shall automatically renew annually in successive 3-year qualification periods unless the county or the municipality provides written notice it elects not to participate in a new qualification period. Now therefore be it resolved that the Northampton County Council hereby approves the county's continued participation as an urban county under the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974. Be it further resolved that the county executive is hereby authorized to execute agreements with the participating municipalities and submit the agreements and any related documents to HUD, indicating the county's continued participation as an urban county under the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974. And as I said, this was reviewed earlier, and I believe all 36 municipalities have agreed to be renewed under this act. Is there any further discussion on this? Then let's call for the vote.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. Next, we have the consideration of Monroe County Local Share Account Grant Resolutions. First, a Clean Slate Recovery Center. Mr. Heckman, please introduce the resolution.
Okay. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of Northampton County to hereby designate the county executive to execute all documents and agreements between the County of Northampton and the Commonwealth Financing Authority to facilitate and assist in obtaining the requested grant. And that's the amount of $118,858 for Recovery Revolution in Bangor, Pennsylvania.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this matter? If not, call for the vote.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, was that passed?
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. Next, we have the Graysdale Recreation Area. Mr. Heckman.
I'm looking in my packet. I have a lot of the DCED stuff. but I
Would you
don't
like
see
me to
it.
move it for you?
Yeah, if you have it in front. Okay. That's it? Okay. Now therefore be it resolved, the County of Northampton hereby approves submitting requests for a Monroe County LSA program grant and a Northampton Lehigh County LSA grant in the amount of $220,000 from CFA to be used for the construction of a secure therapeutic outdoor recreation area located at Graysdale, 2 Graysdale Avenue, Upper Nazareth Township, Pennsylvania. This project entails construction of a wheelchair accessible walking path within an existing courtyard area, as well as areas for residents to socialize and rest, providing residents with cognitive impairment or psychiatric illness the opportunity to enjoy outdoor recreation and gardening within a secure environment. Upon completion of the project, landscaping would be installed by Northampton County Parks. Grant funding would supplement an existing $100,000 anonymous donation accepted by County Council through Resolution Number 116-2020. It is further resolved that the Council of Northampton County does hereby designate the county executive to execute all documents and agreements between the County of Northampton and the CFA to facilitate and assist in obtaining the requested grants. So moved.
Thank you. Can we have discussion on this matter?
I don't know why I couldn't find it.
Hearing none, can we have the vote?
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Next, we have a consideration of a donation from the Friends of Graysdale resolution. Again, Mr. Heckman.
Yes, well, as you know, we set all this, emphasize that. Now therefore be it hereby resolved that Northampton County Council authorizes the Department of Human Services, Graysdale, to accept $5,000 from the Friends of Graysdale to be used by the volunteers to purchase Christmas gifts for residents.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion on the matter? Hearing none, let's call for the vote.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have the consideration of American Rescue Plan funding for small business resolution. Mr. Lot, will you introduce this resolution?
Sure will. These resolutions coming up, the next 4 of them were discussed today at our economic development meeting in depth. I will introduce it. Whereas on March 11, 2021, the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 was signed into law and intended to combat COVID-19 pandemic, including public health and economic impacts. And whereas Northampton County was awarded an allocation of approximately $30 million in American Recovery Plan funding to spend on various relief efforts, and whereas the grant committee reviewed, whereas the grant review committee comprised Northampton County Department of Community and Economic Development staff and county administration convened to review and make funding recommendations. The recommendations totaling $943,644 for 69 projects are attached hereto and made part hereof Exhibit A. Now, therefore it be resolved by the Council of the County of Northampton, 1, that the recommended grants in Exhibit A are approved. 2, that the county executive of the County of Northampton is authorized to execute any and all necessary grant agreements with the applicants not to exceed the approved amount for each grant. So introduced.
Thank you, Mr. Lott. Is there any discussion on this matter? Seeing and hearing none, call for the vote.
Mr. Lott.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. Next, we have the consideration of hotel tax grant resolution. Mr. Lott.
Yes, again, these were reviewed in committee meeting today, so I will introduce them. Whereas Northampton County Department of Community and Economic Development solicited competitive applications for the 2021 Hotel Tax Grant Program. Whereas grant review committees comprised of NCDCED staff, county council, and local experts convened to review and make funding recommendations. And whereas the recommendations attached hereto and made a part hereof as Exhibit A, totaling $1,020,299 in grant funds for 51 projects have been presented to Northampton County Council Community and Economic Development Committee. Whereas Northampton County Council is desirous to make grants to the projects in Exhibit A. Now, therefore, it be hereby resolved by the Council of the County of Northampton. 1, the recommended grants in Exhibit A are approved. 2, that the county executive of the County of Northampton is authorized to execute grant agreements with applicants not to exceed approved amounts for each grant. So introduced.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this matter? Mr. Myers.
Just one. I want to thank the folks that took part in that. I was one of the members, and it was truly a pleasure doing this, and I want to thank those folks for giving us a whole lot of information.
I'd like to echo those words. I was also a part of the process. Thank you. I see he's in the back there.
And I wanted to thank Mr. Myers and Mr. McGee for serving on the committee for representing council. So thank you for doing that. Mr. Cusick, did you have a question?
Yeah, just, is this a typo on Exhibit A at the top? It says 20201 Hotel Tax Grant Program.
Yeah, it's a typo. Supposed to be 2021. Should say 2021, Madam President.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it. Where
It's
is
at
it?
the top, it's the heading.
At the top on the exhibit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's your department, not ours, right? Fix that, thank you.
Should it be 2021?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Because if not, we're here way too long. Call for the vote?
Mr. Lott.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky. Yes, adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Lott, you have the consideration of emergency medical services grant resolution. Go ahead.
Okay, again, we discussed this in committee meeting, whereas on March 5th, 2020, Northampton County Council adopted resolution number 27-2020, creating the Northampton County Emergency Medical Services EMS grant program. Whereas Northampton County Department of Community and Economic Development solicited competitive applications for the 2021 EMS Round 2 grants. And whereas Grant Review Committee comprised of NCDCED staff convened to review and make funding recommendations. Whereas the recommendations attached hereto and made a part hereof as Exhibit A totaling $1 million in grants funding 27 projects have been presented to Northampton County Council, Community and Economic Development Committee. And whereas Northampton County Council is desirous to make grants to the projects in Exhibit A. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved by the Council of the County of Northampton, 1, that the recommended grants in Exhibit A are approved. 2, that the county executive of the County of Northampton is authorized to execute grant agreements with the applicants not to exceed the approved amount for each grant. So introduced.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion on this matter?
Just a quick comment. I'll thank the committee. But I just wanted to point out that over the last year and a half or so, how difficult it has been for these smaller volunteer fire and ambulance companies to raise money. I mean, I know in Williams Township, we rely on a carnival and breakfasts, and, all of last year, they were unable to hold those events. So being able to pass this money on to our first responders, particularly the volunteers in some of our smaller boroughs and rural areas, is absolutely critical because of the loss that they suffered because of their inability to raise money over the past year and a half. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Call for the vote, please.
Mr. Lott.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. Next, we have the consideration of Grow Norco Grant Resolution. Mr. Lott.
Okay, once again, reviewed in depth at the committee meeting earlier today. Whereas Northampton County Department of Community and Economic Development solicited competitive applications for the 2021 Grow Norco Round 2 grants. And whereas a grant review committee comprised of NCDCED staff convened to review and make funding recommendations. And whereas NCDCED has presented the grant review committee recommendations attached hereto and made a part hereof Exhibit A, totaling $2,798,100 in grant funds for 87 projects in the Economic Development Subcommittee of the Northampton County Council. And whereas Northampton County Council is desirous to make grants to the projects in Exhibit A. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved by the Council of the County of Northampton, 1, that the recommended grants in Exhibit A are approved, that the county executive of the County of Northampton is authorized to execute grant agreements with the applicants not to exceed approved amount for each grant. So introduced.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this? Call for the vote.
Mr. Lott.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the members of DCED that are here this evening for all your hard work, for all this heavy lift. I know we're not done, but this is wonderful to see the scope and the breadth of how much outreach has been done, how it's reaching everyone across the county, and we can't thank you enough for all your hard work. Are there any other items of new business to discuss? Mr. Heckman.
I would like to point out to Mrs. Ferraro, if I may. Mrs. Ferraro? Ms. Ferraro? Your reference to the Cross Timbers Inn, I think if you look at the group sitting up here, probably most have no idea what you're talking about, but I just wanted to
It's our secret
point that out.
Oh, dear God. That was off mic, right? Your secret place? Any other real new business to discuss? Hearing and seeing none, committee reports. Mr. Lott.
Today, we had prior to our council meeting, we had an economic development meeting, which we reviewed all the resolutions we had just passed. We went into detail and heard presentations for each of the resolutions we have just passed. Thank you.
Mr. Heckman?
Previous to this meeting, we had a Human Service Committee meeting. We had a presentation from the Director of Nursing, Ms. Vaughn. Very comprehensive presentation. And, we certainly then got into the issues regarding great sales, and it's still doing quite a bit of work out there. And then we also discussed the local care conference we took care of, and the donation, and a report from the Director of Human Services, basically giving us a rundown. But I think the thing that stands out, my apologies, the thing that stands out is the staffing in children, youth, and families, which has been a problem for decades, is still a problem. And I firmly believe that until the state breaks out the children, youth, and family caseworker pay scales, if we end up keeping them, it's going to remain a problem. But that's a little insider baseball, I guess. Anyway, that's my report.
Thank you. I have three announcements on committees. First, that their governance committee will meet on October 21st at 3:30 p.m. Next, that the next budget hearing will be on October 13th at 4:30 p.m., where I think we'll be reviewing DCED. Am I correct on that? And then lastly, I just want to announce the process of, we have the business to select the new, the replacement for the controller, that we will be receiving resumes up until next week, and then we will be interviewing those candidates at the Personnel Committee meeting on October 20th, in the hopes that we will be able to make a recommendation for the meeting on the 21st. So if you're interested and you're not on the Personnel Committee, but you want to be part of that, you're duly informed. Any liaison reports? Mr. Giovanni?
The IT governance meeting, I was not there, but it met October 5th on Tuesday. But I did have a conversation with Mr. Mace about what went down on the agenda. He was telling me about some of the park cameras that he's working on with the firewalls and installing switches. And those parks are Todd's Gap, Wayne Grove, and Louise Moore Park that he's working on. I also asked him about our long-awaited poly clarity conversation. And they had, again, some certificate issues, but he says that's all cleared up. They will be having admin training at the beginning of the week, and hopefully by next week, user training. And user training shouldn't be too bad because it's mostly like a Zoom. You won't really take no notice. It's all remote. So that's all my report.
Thank you. Any other liaisons? Ms. Zirinsky?
I attended the Farmland Preservation Board meeting. We now have currently preserved 17,916.57 acres on 226 farms. And also the applications for the first round, and there could potentially be a second round, will be November 1st. So that information will be available on the website to anybody who wants to preserve their farm. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Lott, did I see your hand?
Prison Advisory Board, we met via phone on September 28th. There is no visitors or I'll start again with my mic on. September 28th, via the phone, we had a Prison Advisory Board. There was, at this point, no visitors or volunteers are allowed in the prison. The new inmates are tested prior to being put into the general population. As of October 4th, 21 cases of COVID-19 among inmates at our prison. Since the start, we had 255 tested positive in our prison. Since March 2020, Northampton County Prison has had implemented 4,733 tests on the inmates. Masks must be worn by the inmates when they move outside of their cell. Any inmates participating in work release or work programs must be vaccinated. That's a advantage, and they're working with a lot of other people, so they're required to be vaccinated, and that's a bonus for them to be able to get in those programs. The prison held 18 vaccination clinics this year. We did 383 inmates total vaccinated. Currently, we have 300 inmates at our facility fully vaccinated. The vaccinations are done by Prime Care, our facility health care in there. They are not mandatory for staff or inmates, and there is currently 621 inmates in our county prison. That ends that report, and if I can, I'll go right into my Economic Development Board meeting. That was held via Zoom on the 22nd. This is Lehigh Valley Economic Board meeting. They had a study done. They hired an outside company from Georgia. They did one of these before, I believe, about 5 years ago, called the Garner Group. They're looking at the strengths and weaknesses of our Lehigh Valley, and attracting businesses to it. I plan on bringing them in next year, early next year, to go over the Garner report with you. And there's a couple other new things happening that, can't be quite announced yet. But so I intend on having them early on in the year to go over some of that. One thing that did stand out, a lot of the, sometimes these outside reports, they tell you what you know, but a lot of times they can see things that you don't see. And one of the things they pointed out was Martin Guitars, how we don't capitalize on Martin Guitars in the Lehigh Valley. They talked about Fender and, how they use that for a major tourist draw. So some of the people on that board got very interested in that subject. So we'll see what we can do with that. There were some ideas, but I'm not going to take I'm sure they'll talk about that a little bit. The director also stated, without me prompting this, because we talked a lot about what they're trying to recruit: life sciences, manufacturing, technical fields out there. Life sciences is big in the Lehigh Valley. We have 5 colleges, or many colleges in the valley that are, we can feed this field. We don't need to we don't need to settle for just logistics, but it gets a little confusing. They did talk a lot about that, because some of your manufacturing, you're gonna come in these buildings that are 200,000 square feet, 300, 400,000. Part of it's gonna be a little logistics because they're manufacturing, so it's shipping out. But that being said, there was some talk about what we recruit. Mr. Cunningham, the director, stated, and he stated to me personally one time prior, but stated to the whole board, that they use no resources to attract logistic companies, and basically we don't need to. Our location drives them here by themselves. So I was happy to hear him state to the different board members that we are not using any resources to attract any pure logistical companies to the Lehigh Valley. And that ends my report.
Thank you, Mr. Lott. Are there any other liaison reports? If there's none, council clerk report and council solicitor report. I just want to take a minute to thank our staff, because they did a lot getting the agenda ready, getting all this stuff together, getting the budget out and ready to us. So thank you for all you do for us. And with that, can we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I want to go up and say thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.